Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Hare and Forbes Machinery House, Pace Farm, Hero Hoists, and Martin's Panel Masters. What Japanese car manufacturer was named after 50 bells and was game enough to take on the small to medium car market from 1963 to 1973? It was Isuzu, and the mighty little car was the Bellett. From grocery getter through to a race car, and you'll see more on this week's episode of Classic Restos. G'day, I'm Fletch, and on this week's episode of the show, I have travelled to the Western Suburbs of Sydney here in New South Wales, as it's time to showcase some automotive durability from Japan. But before I show you more, you need to see this. It's thanks to Shannons. Ask about multi-policy discounts and sign up for the Shannons Club. Call 134646 for a quote and see more at shannons.com.au. And Hare and Forbes has the range. Buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. Yes, this week's episode, it showcases classic Japanese vehicles. How cool is this? These Japanese display days, well, they don't come along all that often. So when they do, well, that gives me even more reason to want to bang on about it. It's time now. Welcome to the Isuzu Car Club of Australia's 50th anniversary event. Here on the grounds of Linwood House, a leafy backdrop sets the scene. There is no doubt whatsoever that automotive quality from Japan over decades has embossed a footprint legacy, larger than a sumo. Not only here in Australia, but the rest of the world has copped it as well. Today it's about classic Isuzu and of course the people. This is the 50th anniversary. The Isuzu Car Club started in 1968, making this car club one of the most senior in the country. There are just 43 members. There are 5 life members, and another 8 people will become members today from simply bringing their Isuzu along. This club, like most, but more so because of its size, is about mates helping mates, assisting with parts, and even working in conjunction with the Bellett Car Club of Victoria and the Old School Japanese Car Club in Queensland. It's about keeping what's left of these mighty Isuzu cars on the road, providing access to the New South Wales Conditional Registration Scheme, through to ensuring that members are aware of suitable insurance, like a leader, such as Shannons. 35 classic Isuzus enjoy New South Wales conditional registration through this club. 19 of these cars are owned by the Smith family, 3 brothers who have been Isuzu enthusiasts all of their lives.
Well, it started with me with my father. He was a truck driver, an owner driver. He bought a 1960 model prime mover in 1963. And then in January 1965 I bought an Isuzu WASP. I used to buy fruit and vegetables from the Haymarket in Sydney and sell them by the bucket around Mount Druitt and Blacktown of a weekend and after work. Then in 1966, after not going to Vietnam, I bought a heavy truck, a 1960 model Isuzu, the same as my father's. And I was doing interstate at that time. I had a 24-foot tray on it and a lazy axle. Then January 1967 I bought a new Bellett, a great little car. Then I was part of the club when it started in 1968. We're here today with our 50th anniversary celebrations. And I had 4 younger brothers at the time, and as they got their driver's licence, they bought Belletts. 3 of them are in the club here now, you know, so it's been a great social thing. We sort of let the club go, I did, for 20 or 30 years as I was having children and kids and all that sort of activity. But after retiring about 2003, we sort of kicked the club off again with Dave Maurice, our president, and it was still a registered CAMS club when he went to register the club. So yeah, it's been a fantastic social thing for my life and my brothers and the Bellett Car Club family all the way from 1968 till now. It's fantastic.
And Isuzu comes to us with plenty of interesting history. Here is a little about the company from 1949 through to 1974. 1949 was the year Isuzu finally was adopted as the company name. Meanwhile, in 1942, Hino Heavy Industries was split off from Isuzu, becoming a separate corporation. Truck production began in 1945 with the permission of the occupation authorities. Big things happened in 1953 when the Hillman Minx passenger car is produced under licence of Roots Group. The Minx remained in production until 1962. 1961 celebrated the introduction of Isuzu's first owned car, the Bellett. Punching above its weight, the small producer of making cars were, would you believe, too large and pricey for the Japanese market at the time. So Isuzu spent some time looking for a commercial partner. Back then, pressure came from MITI, who were attempting to limit the number of automobile manufacturers in Japan. So with cooperation with Fuji Heavy Industries, known now as Subaru, things ramped up in 1966, but was to be short-lived. In 1968, an agreement with Mitsubishi was formed. This ended even quicker by 1969. The next year, an equally short-lived collaboration was entered with Nissan, and then a few months later, in September 1971, a more durable capital agreement was signed with General Motors. In 1974, here in Australia, the Holden Gemini proudly wore the Isuzu Motors badging. Making our way through the 50th anniversary of the Isuzu Car Club Australia. How are you, Warren?
Good, Fletch, how are you, mate?
Great, what an event.
It's fantastic, it's a great turnout.
Yeah.
A lot of cars, a few faces I haven't seen before, and some we haven't seen for a long time.
One of the smallest clubs in New South Wales, or possibly Australia, yet one of the longest running.
Yeah, well, it's my parents started it, so it's 50 years on now. And it's had its challenges over the years and a few different name changes, but it's still going strong, which is great to see.
What a credit to you. And talking of going strong, that's testament for the cars as well. I've always had a bit of a soft spot for the Japanese classics because when we get back to basic vehicles from half a century ago, talk about durability, simplicity, turnkey start. They literally ran for years, didn't they?
And still do. This one behind me, the 65 Isuzu WASP, which I rebuilt probably about 5 years ago. Just concerned about parts availability. I left a few things alone. So the gearbox and the diff, all I did was change the oil. And this is a vehicle that had been sitting in a paddock for over 10 years and seized everything else up.
It's a legacy for the Japanese. It's the quality and reliability through all the decades, and even still running today. You get a Japanese vehicle, 9.5 times out of 10, you won't have any dramas.
Yeah, well, I do have a current Isuzu D-Max as my main daily vehicle, and yeah, fault-free driving. So yeah, the Japanese really do know how to build a car.
They certainly do. Speaking of the WASP, now I wanted to start with you first because you learn as you go with these Isuzu cars. You look at this 65 WASP behind us. Now you've chosen this vehicle to do some custom work on. You didn't leave it original. What's the story there, Warren?
Well, this car was originally only purchased to get a few parts from because I had another one which I was going to work on. But I started on this and yeah, it was rust-free and too good to scrap. So yeah, basically picked a colour we liked and ran with that.
You went a bit berserk on it, didn't you?
Well, 6 months of berserk, but yeah.
It'd have to go down probably as the only car in the country too of that type to get a WASP with a tray on the back and do a little bit of custom work to it. You haven't gone too over the top. Nice wheels, the bronze paint. It's a pretty schmick looking little machine.
Yeah, it gets a few looks whenever you're driving around. You see people as they're coming past you and they're turning their heads pretty quick. So yeah, it does draw attention, but yeah, just try to keep it sort of simple, not over the top, and yeah, kept in character the lines of the vehicle. So.
Warren, great catching up with you. Like I said first off the rank here, thought we'd pick on you. A little bit different. Not only is it a tray top, and it's a WASP, and it's a 1965 model, but also the touch of Warren that you've given this vehicle, mate. So thank you very much.
No worries, Fletch. Thank you.
Every weekend around Australia, motoring enthusiasts get together to share their passion for cars and bikes. It's a passion that brings us together. All sorts of people, all sorts of cars and bikes, from the classics of today to the classics of tomorrow. At Shannons, we understand enthusiasts, so when it comes to insurance, it's got to be Shannons. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Call 13 46 46 for a quote.
Martin's Panel Masters has 3 modern accident repair centres. They service Melbourne's inner, outer east and the fast-growing southeast corridor. Your vehicle will receive the best from state-of-the-art repair equipment, finished beautifully from computer-based paint mixing systems, finished in Australian-compliant spray booths. Martin's Panel Masters, located at Ferntree Gully and Berwick, also Box Hill Panels. Hare and Forbes Machinery House has been family owned and operated for over 85 years, and it's easy to see why. Planning on welding? Look at these welding tables and clamps, air compressors and different air tools, sandblasting cabinets, through to spray guns. Everyone is welcome at Machinery House. There are competitive freight rates around Australia, and you can buy online at machineryhouse.com.au. So remember, Hare and Forbes has the range. How can you go past an original car with plastic on the door trims? It always does it for me. How you doing, Graeme?
Good, Fletch. Good, mate.
This is an incredible 1965 Bellett. Tell us a story here.
It belonged to a relative of my wife's. It had sat in a garage for many years, driven very, very little. It's got 8,800 miles since brand new. It sat in a shed for a long time. It hadn't been registered for 30 years, and I've finally got it back on the road now and polished it up, as you can see, and left everything as it is.
Talk about winding the clock back, and that interior, the original seats, Graeme, that's amazing.
Absolutely untouched. The paintwork, the interior, the engine bay, if you look in the boot, it's like a time machine. The whole car has just been forgotten about and kept under cover until now it can be cleaned off and put back on the road where people can see it.
Yeah, they're such a different looking type of car too. I like them. I think for a 4-cylinder car, a classic Japanese car, it'd be great to have in the collection. As we alluded to earlier, well built, mechanically strong, and to think too that when you look at the overall stance of a car like this, it's kind of got like a homely look about it, doesn't it?
It has. It's a very innocent looking car. I've got a couple of old V8s as well. I've got a new V8, but this, even though it isn't the norm, you know, a little 1500cc 4-cylinder.
It's good to meet a guy that doesn't support the emissions rules all that well. You've got an old V8 cranking along. Well, all these old cars, they're just great to have, right?
They're unbelievable. It's so fantastic to see them still on the road. It's great for people to look at them. You don't see many old cars anymore. So the public get to see them, and the new rules with the logbook trial is fantastic because we can get these cars out, and you see all the cars we've got here today.
Graeme, I'd like to touch on a personal note with you as well. The generations coming through our classic car fraternity. It's lovely to see you here with your 15-year-old daughter, Chloe, here today.
That's right. She's been a big supporter and enjoys spending time with me mainly, but she's been really welcomed in the Isuzu Car Club. They're like a big family, so she's itching to come with me. Their next nationals later in the year is in Victoria. We don't know exactly where, and she's already excited knowing that we'll be going to that. And I've got a 17-year-old son, but he's not into it as much. But my daughter will follow me everywhere and just loves the old cars and spending time with me, I hope, for now, till she gets too old. But yeah, it is fantastic. It's great.
All right, mate, thank you so much for bringing this car along. It's going to be hard to top here today, but then again, there's different categories here on the paddock. In terms of the originality, as I alluded to earlier, plastic on the door trims. That's, I love that.
Unbelievable. There's still the 5 original tyres that come from the factory because they've only got 8,000 miles. They still hold air. So for car shows, I've got them to put on. It's just an unbelievable car.
And inside the trunk area too, around the boot section. I mean, it's Doesn't look like it's had anything in it.
I don't think it had any of the old ladies shopping in it or anything. It's all unmarked. It's perfect. The mat's inside. It really is a testament, a time machine, really. It's brilliant.
Good on you. Thanks very much, Graeme. Appreciate it.
Good on you. Thanks, Fletch.
Cheers,
Thanks very much.
The event is awesome as it is. We're upping the ante now. Time for David. How are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Fletch.
That's good. Love this 1968 two-door car, 1600 GT.
Correct.
This shape, I don't think I've seen it around before.
There was only around approximately 300 brought into the country from 1966 to 1969 when they ceased bringing them out.
That's awesome. Look, I love my full-size cars, my V8s. I've got an appreciation for many cars right across the genres. I like these cars. I think they are very cool in their own way. And to think too, when you look at some of the styling on the inside, I can see Lancia in the interior.
Yeah, this is interesting because it has been compared to other marques, Fletch, quite often. The upholstery itself has been replicated to meet up with the original fitment of the upholstery to the car. It often gets confused at times with Coronas and Alphas. So it's still got that link to Europe.
Yeah. And a touch of the US with a little bit of wood grain on the dash as well.
Correct, yes. It's imitation wood.
It's got a bit of everything going on. Now, also, 1968, the 1600 GT, as we've just alluded to. 4-speed gearbox as well.
Correct. 4-speed gearbox, all synchro on all fours.
It's such a nice looking car. I like the look and the profile of the rear quarter, the way it wraps around back with the taillights. A very neat looking car. The pop-out quarter glass sections, the top of the rear quarter as well, complement that styling.
Yes.
It's very neat.
Yes. Well, it comes back to the stage that we always were of the opinion, Fletch, that these cars were years ahead of their time when they were put out, because they also bear fully independent suspension all round.
Yeah. Back to that interior again. I love the seats. The vinyl, it's quite sumptuous. It's soft to touch.
Yes.
I like the grain, the inserts and the seating. That's a stylish unit back there.
Well, I'd like to think so. I like it, Fletch. I've had it now for 12, 13 years.
David, thank you so much for catching up.
No, my pleasure, not yours. My pleasure. Fletch, thank you.
This is a good little show here today. I mean, a very small club, but great attendance and great cars.
We have over 40 cars here today, and considering back in the early 2000s, we had minimal numbers of cars that were available, the club's just gone ahead in leaps and bounds, and as a committee, we're very proud of what's happening.
Good on you.
Thank you.
Keep up the great work, Dave.
Thanks, Fletch. Thank you.
My passion for cars began when Nana and Pop bought their new Toyota Crown. It was Nana's, really. She loved that car. We went everywhere in it. My passion now is just the same, even though my cars are a little different. I've still got Nana's car, couldn't part with it. And I reckon if she was here today, she'd be insured with Shannons too.
Call Shannons on 13 46 46. Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts.
How would you like to double your garage space and work on your cars easily? Well, bring in your own hero with a Lift King hoist. Easy to install models in 1, 2 and 4 post styles. Check the very nifty Spider 2500 portable mini scissor lift. Hero hoists are either Oz certified or carry the Euro CE, your guarantee of quality construction and reliability. I regularly stand under my Lift King, so when you need a bit of a lift, why don't you go stand under yours? Martin's Panel Masters has 3 modern accident repair centres. They service Melbourne's inner, outer east and the fast-growing southeast corridor. Your vehicle will receive the best from state-of-the-art repair equipment, finished beautifully from computer-based paint mixing systems, finished in Australian compliant spray booths. Martin's Panel Masters, located at Ferntree Gully and Berwick, also Box Hill Panels. If you have a restoration project, Hare and Forbes has the tools that you need. Shrinker stretchers, dollies, mallets, bead rollers, profile gauges, professional panel restoration kits, and so much more. Now I warn you, enter at your own risk because you will end up buying something. So come along to your Cap City store or browse and buy online at machineryhouse.com.au because Hare and Forbes has the range. With me now, Club Secretary Julie Amos. How are you this afternoon, Julie?
Very well, thank you, Fletch.
You have to be. Look at your car behind us here, a 1970, a GTR. This car set up for racing. Such a versatile car, the Bellett.
Indeed it is. Built like a Sherman tank, my husband used to say about the Belletts when they were racing a lot. This one hasn't done so much racing, but it's got a lot of the technology from his Group N race car in it.
They were quite successful back in the 60s in their class too, weren't they?
Yes, indeed. Yes, they were generally reliable.
Yep.
And for those enthusiasts who were willing to push it,
yep,
absolutely.
Double overhead cam up front. This would be a fairly nice car to drive. It'd be good under the right foot, I'd imagine.
Oh yes, yes, it's a very nice car to drive, and on the rare occasions when I get to push it a little bit, it responds very well.
Certainly keeps you young, Jill. There's no two ways about that.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Now, paint scheme with the colours, which way have you gone there? Do you know?
This is the original. This is how they were produced, and how they were sold in Japan and in other countries too.
Now, pardon my ignorance, but it would have to be an incredibly rare vehicle.
Oh yes. This one in particular, in Australia, I don't think there's very many at all. Wow. And it's a nice surprise when they come out of the woodwork.
Yeah. Where I have to compliment you is all the years of classic restos and travelling to various parts of the world. This would have to be, well, the smallest car club, yet you're the longest, or one of the longest established. So that's a unique combination there.
Yes, it is. And it all goes back to the people. Everything's about the people. The cars are merely the glue that keeps everyone together. And we've got people here today who were literally there at that very first meeting. And families, 3 generations. There's 2 families here with 3 generations present, and all enthusiasts.
Julie, thank you so much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you, Fletch. It's been a pleasure.
My word, and love your car. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, Tom, give us the rundown on the mechanical specs.
Well, Fletch, it's an interesting car. It's a 4-cylinder 1600 and it's 120 horsepower. It's got a 4-speed close ratio gearbox, all alloy, limited slip diff, and it's got 1.5 wheels. Really lovely devices. Right. The car essentially was designed to do 120 miles an hour, and that's what it does. In fact, it's a bit more than that. Right. And I think that this was a really advanced car back in the 60s, early 60s when they designed it. This is the last of them. It's a car which essentially it ran for 11 years from the beginning to end. This is the last example of that. And it was probably the penultimate sort of fast Bellett. And from here on they went and they raced Geminis and other things. So.
They were the real underdog, weren't they?
They were, but in Japan, where they raced them, they were very successful. They won the 1966 Japan Grand Prix. They were quite good, but they had to race against Prince Skyline GTs, which of course became the GTRs. So they were really having trouble. And in Japan, the class was 2 litres, not 1600. So it made it hard. So all these were bought out, but they just couldn't compete with the 2-litre cars.
I think today's episode has been a great lesson of awareness for these cars.
Oh yes, we're very fortunate you came out to do this. This is 50 years in the making. Here we are, and Isuzu cars have been some of the underdog. I raced them for 20 or 30 years, in fact for probably 50 years if I think about it. And they've always been somewhere where people say, oh, what's that? Right? And but they've been very successful, as you can see today. A large number of people collecting them, restoring them and loving them.
Keep in mind too, if you have anything to do with a classic vehicle club, whether it be bike, car or truck, list it on the Shannons Club for all the world to see. Find out more information when you visit Shannons at shannons.com.au. And as you know, the Geminis were powered by Isuzu, 1975 model, a TX Gemini, Ridgy-Dig, original car. How are you, Michael?
Good, Fletch. How are you?
Good, mate. Where'd you find this little gem?
Just got it off a friend when I was at TAFE, and I believe it was his grandmother's car. Yeah. And he wanted to do it up, and he asked me to go in halves with him, and then he decided he didn't want it at all, so I said I'll take it, and yeah, I've had it ever since. Not
too many left like this, Michael?
No. This is pretty standard. It's automatic. Yeah, as you see it, is exactly how I bought it.
They're a tough little unit, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Like, they're pretty reliable.
Now, back in 1975, the way the TV ads went were "You and I and Gemini." Ooh. Now that's how the ad went, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Now I don't profess to sing, and after that, well, you know that I can't. But that's how the advertising went, and it worked.
It did, yeah. I don't think I was born in '73, so I wasn't around, but I've seen them, and
you were sitting there gnawing on your rusk,
yes.
and you remember that soundtrack, don't you?
I do. Yes.
That's awesome. Now the colour, is it champagne? What's the TX, the proper paint code for this car?
I've looked it up, and what I've found is it's antelope metallic.
Right.
Is what it's called.
Well, I was close, wasn't I, with champagne? Antelope metallic. I couldn't have been any further away. Michael, what can you tell us about the history? Because we're looking at the interior, obviously 100% original, hasn't had a hard life. What has it just been in a garage for the last 115 years? What's the situation?
Pretty much. I was told that it's original kilometres, but I can't say 100%. It's got about 53,000 on the clock, but these model Geminis, they only go to 99,999, then they flip over.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's 100% original. A few things to look at, like the steering wheel doesn't look very worn.
Yeah.
Also, that could have been changed, but
I reckon it's pretty safe to say that they're original kilometres.
yeah, it could be.
Could be.
Yeah.
Might I say, Michael, I like the upmarket look of those dress rims. I thought they were always a classy feature on the wheels of these Geminis.
Yeah, they're the standard ones from the car. Yeah, they're in decent condition, not many scratches on them. The paint's faded. There's like a black paint should be on it, but that's faded. Yeah. But
that's all right, Michael. You tipped the faded box.
Yes.
That's the natural patina that the car has acquired over the years, and you are maintaining that very well. So, mate, good on you. Look after this little gem. As I said earlier, there's not many of these getting around.
No, there's not. There's not. No.
All right. Good on you, Michael.
All right. Thanks, Fletch.
You're welcome, mate.
Good to see you.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there you have it. What a cool little show this was. Just some of the Isuzu Car Club of Australia's 50th anniversary event here in Guildford in New South Wales. And you've seen it first on Classic Restos. Until next week, no matter where you're watching Classic Restos from, please ride and drive safe. I'm Fletch, and I thank you very much for watching. You can like and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/ClassicRestosTV and watch catch-up episodes at shannons.com.au. Classic Restos is proudly brought to you by Shannons, insurance for motoring enthusiasts. Hare and Forbes Machinery House, Pace Farm, Hero Hoists, and Martin's Panel Masters.